Welcome to this session of Object-Oriented Analysis and Design. In this lecture, we are going to talk about how to identify domain concepts using use case. We are assuming that we are already having fully trace use case, and referring that fully trace use case, how we can identify domain concept, which will be useful to draw the domain model further. We know that whenever we learn object oriented paradigm and procedure oriented paradigm, so in procedure oriented paradigm the whole software is divided in form of functions, but whole software in object oriented paradigm divided by different objects. So whenever we say in domain model, we are using domain concepts. So slowly we are going towards the objects of software. So literally these domain concepts will not be acting as the objects, but slowly we are moving to that direction. So in object oriented paradigm, our software is divided in objects, in turn domain concepts. So that we are going to study in this lecture, that how domain concepts will be identified. As we know, domain concept will be appearing like this: store, POS, sell. If you look at them, simply you can understand that they are appearing like noun. They are not verbs. Okay, for example, print, pay. So these are like verbs, so they will not appear as domain concepts. So all domain concepts are noun. Remember that all domain concepts are noun or noun phrases. Noun phrases means multiple words can be there which forming the noun phrase. For example, item identifier. So instead of saying only identifier, item identifier is the noun phrase. So every domain concept is the noun or noun phrase. Now how to identify that? For that, you need to use case which you have already written. Fully trace use case should be written firstly before you start doing identification of domain concept. Now what is the technique for domain concept identification? The technique is very simple, which is called as noun phrase identification technique, or it is also called as noun phrase analysis. What you need to do, you need to identify nouns in the textual description of the problem. Now what is the textual description of the problem in our case? Simple way we can say fully trace use case. So this is nothing but textual description of the problem. So you have a parse, read parse on the fully trace use case and identify nouns or noun phrases. Now whether all identified nouns or noun phrases will be a domain concept? Not necessary. Not necessary. Let us see that. Let us look at the use case. So we know that this use case we have written main success scenario and alternate scenario. So if you have a parse of this use case, so if you look at the use case, you can underline some nouns. So what noun phrase analysis suggests, that have a parse and you underline all nouns. So customer arrives. Now arrives cannot be noun, so customer is the noun. Then POS. Now POS checkout. So it is basically a noun phrase, POS checkout. With items to purchase. So item is again one noun. So it should be indicated in singular form. Even if it is appearing as a plural form, items, so take a singular form, item as the noun. Then purchase. Purchase is again the verb, so it will not be identified as domain concept. Cashier, then records, no identifier for each item, so it is nothing but item identifier. So if you say identifier of the each item, so I am taking it as the noun phrase item identifier. Then quantity, this is again new noun. So we are just finding out nouns. Then system. So system is a very broad noun. you can take it blindly, no problem, but down the line it will get removed. Item price, item information. So item information, item price, you can see sales transaction. So now sale transaction is, even if it's sounding like a verb, selling the item, but sale transaction is nothing but noun. So sale is the noun basically, okay, which is representing a sale transaction. It is not selling the item, so in that way don't call it as verb. So in this way you need to find out all the nouns in your use case. Now the question is whether all nouns will be appearing as domain concept. All nouns will be appearing as domain concepts. Look at this sentence. Some of the noun phrases or nouns are candidate concepts. That means they are domain concept. But some of the nouns you identified, they are not domain concept, but they are attributes of other domain concept. Let us look at our noun phrase analysis. You have identified these many. Now customer, yes, it is a domain concept. POS checkout, okay, it is a domain concept. Item, it is a domain concept. If you look at item identifier, it is the item ID. Now if as an analyst you understood the system in a detailed way and in a correct way, you will realize that item identifier is not the separate domain concept, but it is an attribute of existing domain concept, which is item. So it is an attribute. So what do? You just cross out all the nouns which are not domain concept, but they are attribute. If you look at quantity, again quantity is the attribute, so you cross it out. So nouns which are attributes cannot be domain concept. So item price, this is again attribute, so cross it out, that it cannot be domain concept. Sale transaction, yes, it can be domain concept. POS checkout, cashier, customer, system, item, this can be domain concept. Okay, so simple technique to identify domain concept using noun phrase analysis is, you need to list down all noun or all noun phrases in the use case and cross all the nouns or noun phrases which are attributes. So remaining are your domain concept. So remember that noun phrase to domain concept, this mapping mechanically is not possible in a one-to-one. So you need to take a judgment that whether this noun is really an attribute or a domain concept. Then you can come to the conclusion that which are the domain concept in your system. So domain model can be drawn at a scenario level. So for example, you can draw the domain model for only process cell scenario, or it can be drawn at a system level also. So on a sample basis, you can consider in POS system, these different items can be identified as domain concept. So in this way, you can identify domain concept using noun phrase analysis technique, and you are using fully dressed use case for that. So that's all about identification of domain concept. Thank you for listening this session. See you in the next lecture.